Hello, everybody. My name's Tom, and I'm here for some final thoughts. And I'm a little bit earlier than usual because it's going to be too difficult for me, basically, this coming Thursday, Friday, to actually do any more videos. So I'm going to do kind of a little bit of a previewy final thoughts video because it's not final thoughts because we've still got the practice sessions to come. But it's going to be the last kind of actual video that I'm able to put out because of life happening for me. So I just wanted to kind of discuss with you my final-ish thoughts for Japan Suzuka because it's been arguably one of the most difficult team selections like I can actually ever remember, to be honest, because we're so split between this, well, for those of us that can afford it, the Verstappen build versus the kind of new template build of like the Leclerc, Sainz or Perez, which, what currently got on the screen right now is kind of the new template from Australia, but now some of us can afford this Verstappen build at the expense of a bunch of absolute rubbish budget drivers. Something like this, or I could, take a -20 wild card, something like this. This is, if I'm going to go with this build, I am kind of thinking wild card seems appropriate because it'd be -20 to get to this, which just seems bonkers. So I'd definitely wild card, or I could leave an Alex Albon and kind of go without Hulkenberg. But I do genuinely think that Hulkenberg just has that higher potential to increase in value and actually get a few points compared to Albon, hopefully, maybe. So I think if I was going to go with this Verstappen build, it would be like this. But it's just, I'm in like an inner turmoil in my head. So I thought I'm going to fire up the recording software and we're going to talk through what I'm thinking, because I think I know there are quite a few of you out there who are in a similar position to me. I almost envy the people that can't afford the Verstappen build because they don't really have such a crazy decision to make this weekend. They can just stick with Leclerc, Perez or Sainz and kind of just go with that. And I've been at certain points in the last week or so, or 2 weeks almost now, I've been kind of leaning one way and then another. I think, I'm going to stick with my current build the budget up, and then hope to move on Verstappen for the sprint races. But there's lots of chit chat going on in my YouTube comments and on Twitter, etc., saying, what happens if one of those drivers, like a Stroll, who you're banking on getting that budget for you, what if he DNFs, or what if you're 2 times like Leclerc in the Ferraris that maybe aren't quite as quick as McLaren, for example, around here. The McLarens were quick around here last season, double podium. Perhaps as a 2 times option, you go with Leclerc or Sainz, and they get like 15 points or something, and you're suddenly so far behind. They only go up like 0.1 or 0.3 according to the algorithm, whichever one it is. Whereas Verstappen goes up is 0.2, and suddenly not only are you getting more points of Verstappen being your 2 times, but you also might potentially get more budget, because it's quite a lot more likely that Verstappen will go up 0.2 and finish first, get maximum kind of points, or maximum 35 points plus potential fastest lap, because he's pretty good at getting fastest lap in general. So you're looking at potential kind of safe 45 points if he doesn't randomly DNF again, which I don't expect. So in terms of points, I do think in terms of points that this Verstappen build is definitely, well, I wouldn't say definitely, I would say almost definitely better in terms of points, I think, or at least in terms of consistency of those points. There's argument that perhaps going with a more, if we just switch it down again to one of these other builds. In fact, if we just sort of switch it back like this, to a team like this, or even like what I've got over here on Team 3, which also kind of fairly template at the moment. So there's an argument to go with this, kind of build your budget with the likes of Stroll, who can go up 500,000 quite easily, perhaps 1 million. And then Perez, who, arguably should be going up 0.3, or if he gets a, second place, then he may well go up by 1 million. And then next week or a couple of weeks' time, when we go into the China sprint race, I can jump onto Verstappen build with better budget drivers. And when I say better budget drivers, I mean by having this team where I'd be reliant on literally the Saubers, Logan Sargent. Like, having Logan Sargent on my team is probably the biggest. Get out! You're not allowed in that spot. Not allowed in that spot. Verstappen goes there. Sargent, Bottas, and Hulkenberg. So yeah, like go back to this team and switch to a team like this for the sprint races. But it's like there is that chance if I don't go for this now, then I might be out and I'm priced out of it before I get to the sprint races, and I'm stuck with flitting between Perez, Sainz, Leclerc, maybe even Norris or whoever it is in that 2 times slot when we don't have Verstappen. And I'm only 0.3 being able to afford this current team. I don't think, this is literally the cheapest possible budget drivers I can get. So if anything goes slightly wrong, if there is a DNF with like a Stroll or a Leclerc or whoever it is that I've got instead of these guys, then I may well be priced out of going into the sprint race. And obviously, sprint races, back-to-back sprint races, China and Miami, big points on offer. You want to really maximize those points. And I'm just wondering if perhaps trying to be, I don't know if this is the right word, but trying to be a bit clever and gain budget and then jump onto a Verstappen build when you've already got the Verstappen build there, you can afford it now. I'm just wondering if I'm being a bit too smarty pants about it and should just actually jump on the Verstappen build. If it didn't cost me any like minus 10s, minus 20s or the wildcard, because that is quite a big detrimental effect of having me switching to this team. To get to this team, I literally have to do a minus 10 or a 20 or a wildcard. And, locking out my wildcard for the rest of the season, although I feel like this particular team structure of Verstappen on top of a Red Bull Ferrari constructor build is probably going to be strongest for at least the foreseeable future, for at least the next, I don't know, half dozen races, until perhaps McLaren or Ferrari can properly challenge the Red Bulls, which I'm not even sure that's going to happen, because we also have to bear in mind, in terms of upgrades, Red Bull are bringing, what I understand, a new floor to Suzuka, which, providing it works, is going to set the Ferraris and McLarens back even further from catching them up, and that puts Verstappen potentially even further out of the field and even more guaranteed of those 35 or 45 points that we see him bring him in on a regular basis. If we can see here, 45, 36, obviously the minus 10 there because of the unlucky kind of DNF, but there we go. So yeah, until I see the practice sessions, I can't say with certainty I'm going to this build or that build. A part of me kind of just wants to, if I go back to my current Team 1, a part of me just kind of wants to, just drop out a Guan Yu Zhou, who I don't have to worry about in terms of the Sauber's pit stops and stuff. I could just drop him out, bring in a Hulkenberg, and have a team like this, which on paper, this team looks really good for building budget. However, there's no guarantee that Leclerc, until we see practice sessions, no guarantee that Ferrari and Leclerc are necessarily going to be like the best two times, and therefore I might have to like switch him out, and then I can't afford Perez. I know this is very team dependent for me, and this is why I'm talking for it, but it's helping me kind of process what I'm talking about. And like I say, a lot of people will be in a similar situation. So I either stick with Leclerc or go down to a Sainz. If I want to be able to, if we just again reset it again, if I want to be able to afford a Perez, I can't do a direct swap, so I can't just bank a transfer, have 3 transfers going into China by going Leclerc to Perez, because I'm 0.3 short of being able to do that, which means I'd have to change someone else like a Guan Yu Zhou, for example, bring in Perez, and then bring in most likely a Bottas and go with a team like this. And I do think this team looks perfectly reasonable, and if you can't afford the Verstappen build, then I think something like this looks pretty great. It's just annoying that it uses two transfers, and a lot of people will want 3 transfers going into the China Grand Prix. Of course, if I'm going to wildcard into the Verstappen build, I won't care about having three transfers, because I'll probably be pretty much locked in to that team structure with Verstappen sat on top, and the Red Bull and the Ferraris down here, and the budget drivers. Maybe if I go over this build again, I keep flitting between these different builds. I'm sorry, but let's just do it because I'm talking about it right a second. If I do go with this build, where is he? Where's Sargent? He's there. And like I said, probably if I was going to wildcard, bring in Hulkenberg instead. So if I did go this build, there is a chance, a small chance, but a chance that the likes of Bottas, Zhou, Sargent, hopefully Hulkenberg, would actually go up in price if maybe they have a random good race. There is a slight chance of rain, although that seems to be fading away at the moment, looking at the weather forecast. But rain can sometimes throw up surprises, and maybe the likes of Bottas, Zhou, Sargent can make a bunch of places up, get that 0.5 normalized ratio number as per the price change algorithm, and go up by 500,000. It's possible. So going for a team like this, it's not like I'm completely writing off my budget, even though I think it is going to make my budget pretty stagnant. There is still a chance that my budget kind of goes up, fine, but obviously ignoring the likes of Lance Stroll, who's kind of sat there just pretty obviously a good budget booster, has me scratching my head as to what I should actually do. But then I'm also thinking, like, if I'm building my budget, what am I actually building my budget towards? And getting, is going from like a Sargent to an Albon or a Sargent to a Magnussen or something like that in a week or so's time, that much difference to just getting the optimal kind of team structure. When I say optimal team structure, I literally am talking about Verstappen 2 times with Red Bull and Ferrari constructor. And part of me thinks like maybe it's better to just get the Verstappen 2 times in there with this team structure. Just kind of cross my fingers and hope for the best with these budget guys. Hope Sauber can have some less terrible pit stops. Hope Sargent can not DNF. And hope Hulkenberg can continue to kind of impress as he's done so far this season and gain a little bit of value. So yeah, I do kind of like this team. Does probably burn my wild card to get there. I'm still very much and ahhing about what the right thing to do is, but like I say, if I go with the budget building and go with like a Perez plus a Stroll, etc., what am I actually hoping to achieve for that extra little bit of money? I'll probably make an extra somewhere between 0.5 to 1.5 million more than what this team will build. And what can that extra, say, if we average it out, what can that extra million get me? It literally gets me like from a Sargent up to, I'd have 7.2, so it'd literally get me up to what, like no one basically, like maybe an Albon or a Gasly if he drops in price or something. It gets me away from Sargent, which I'd be really pleased about, but is waiting a week and potentially being locked out of this formation actually just not worth it. And I do think back, and I know it's not like in any way linked to what happened last year, but it does make me think last year when I had that opportunity about midway through the season to get on the triple Red Bull, the triple McLaren, and run it. I think it was around was it around Zandvoort or something like that? It was near the Zandvoort race, I think. And I had the opportunity and I didn't go with it. I went with a slightly different build. I can't remember what exactly. But anyway, what happened was the following race with the price changes, I actually got priced out for the next few races of going triple Red Bull, triple McLaren, which was like the optimal build at that time. So yeah, I locked myself out of it trying to be a bit clever. I can't remember exactly what I did, like I said. So maybe I should learn from that and just not be clever, kind of forget about budget, just focus on the points, particularly the big sprint races coming up, China and Miami. Just make sure I got Verstappen in there at the top of this stack of Red Bull and Ferrari. Just hope the budget guys can just, if they get 0, I'm happy sort of thing. Because they're only going to drop by 0.1 by the looks of it. And just kind of go with that. So yeah, I've been like a very split. I might be completely different this time tomorrow and completely different again after the practice sessions. But right now, as my final thoughts, if you call it that, my final-ish thoughts, where I'm kind of leaning towards is actually probably using the wild card and just going in on the Verstappen build. Like I say, the alternative to, if I want to save the wild card, I could just do a -10, which also doesn't particularly excite me, but I could do a -10 to get to this team. If I was going to wild card, I don't know if it's worth using the wild card over a -10 to get Hulkenberg instead of Albon. Potentially, because like I say, I think Hulkenberg does seem to have a little bit more price game potential, and the Haas doesn't look too bad this season. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Like I say, practice session is still to come. If, for example, the Ferraris look amazing, then maybe it makes sense to wait another week and keep the likes of Sainz or Leclerc as your 2 times and hope to build just a fraction more budget. You don't have to look at Logan Sargent staring back at you when you see your team, just riddled with DNFs last season. It might just be a matter of time before he DNFs, and having him on my team is going to hurt. But will the odd DNF from him be outweighed by the supreme consistency of Max Verstappen, kind of being doubled or tripled up effectively by having him as a 2 times, on top of the Red Bull Racing Constructor, on top of the Ferraris, who are currently the second best team, although it is getting a bit closer than McLaren's, like I say. So, and I think if I haven't already mentioned it, I think that's one of the other reasons why I feel like building budget might actually be sensible, kind of moving away again from the Verstappen build, but actually building budget might be sensible because when we look at the price of the McLarens to the Ferraris, there's a 3 million difference, and getting an extra million or so, kind of bridging that gap a little bit for down the line when the McLarens are potentially the second best team over the Ferraris, because right now I can't get there. I'm a good couple of million short, and there's just no way. There's just no wiggle room with my budget drivers whatsoever. So if I, for example, wanted to get McLaren in, it leaves me 4.5, so I'm well short, like by about $1.5 million. I've been able to afford them. So perhaps that $1.5 million I could gain by sticking with that kind of Leclerc 2 times Lance Stroll hope to get an extra million or $1.5 million, and then down the line that might pay dividends with getting McLaren in when they bring these upgrades, which are being talked about quite a lot. And we know the McLaren upgrades last year were very effective. if they're as effective this season and they might leapfrog the Ferraris and are challenging the Red Bulls again like they were on some tracks last season, then I might look back at this Japan decision with thinking like, thank God I decided to build my budget and now I can afford the McLarens. Whereas if I don't do that and I'm stuck with Ferrari, who are like potentially the third best team down the line, then I'll be a bit like, ugh, don't have my wild card to wiggle around a bit either. So yeah, I'm completely torn, and I'm sorry, but I don't know what I'm doing yet because I need to wait for the practice sessions, and I'll make my final decision like right up close to the deadline. Because I think the deadline for me here in England is 7 a.m. I want to say, pretty early in the morning. So yeah, I'll make my decision. I'll wake up at like 6, half 6 or whatever, and make my final decision then. But that's kind of it for me for now. I'd like to hear your opinion, of course, because I've been listening to you guys, reading your comments on YouTube. I've been listening to your replies to me on X, Twitter. And as always, I kind of want to know what you are thinking. If you're in my position, are you in my position? What are you doing? If you're not in my position, would you envy my position? If if you're sat there, you can't afford the Verstappen build. Are you sat there going, no brainer, Verstappen, put him in? Or are you in the camp where I feel like quite a big lot of you guys are in this camp of no, building budget is important. You can hold off on Verstappen for a little bit longer, but if I hold off, am I going to get burnt by not being able to afford him for sprint races? Who knows? There's just too much. There's just too much to think about. It's a very hard decision this week. That's kind of where I'm at. So yeah, thanks very much, guys. See you soon for more F1 Fantasy Ramblings. Bye for now.